All right. Bismillah wa alhamdulillah wa salawat wa salam ala Rasulullah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa min wala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters, dear seekers of knowledge, dear mental health professionals, dear alim and alimas, dear ustad and ustadas, dear students of psychology and Islamic psychology, and dear brothers and sisters in humanity. We're very honored to be with all of you. A lot of you have showed interest to this webinar that we're doing today with Dr. Samah. We're very honored to host her. And this is part of what we try to do, at least as a movement within International Students of Islamic Psychology, ISIP, to raise awareness with regards to the plight of the Palestinian brothers and sisters, and also from our point of view as we work with Muslim mental health and Islamic psychology, what can we as an international community do to support our beloved Palestinian brothers and sisters, and also all of our colleagues in Palestine that are working with mental health and psychology, inshallah. We did 2 weeks ago a webinar where we invited Dr. Iman and Dr. Yasser and Dr. Denise, all of them Palestinians themselves and psychologists and psychiatrists, and we had a really good conversation with them with regards to how we as an international movement can support our beloved Palestinian brothers and sisters on the ground, and at the same time some reflections with regards to mental health as well. From that webinar, we had a lot of people joining, a lot of people showed interest to continue having more webinars related to Palestine. And Dr. Samah is one of the leading, mental health professionals from Palestine, working within Palestine as well. And alhamdulillah, she has answered our request to join us today, which we're very honored to listen to her experience and knowledge and learn from it as well. Just very briefly, brothers and sisters, feel free to write any questions you guys want to ask Dr. Samah in the chat. We will do our best to answer to ask these questions to Dr. Samah throughout the interview, inshallah. Today's session will be more like an interview rather than just a direct talk from Dr. Samah. So I have prepared some questions that I will ask, but we will try to add your questions as well, inshallah. We will have this webinar or this session for about 90 minutes today, inshallah, including time for Q&As as well. Q&As will be done through the Zoom chat as well, because we're so many people in the webinar today. It will be difficult to unmute everyone. So feel free to answer your questions or ask your questions in the Zoom chat. Throughout the session, some resources in the Zoom chat will be shared as well. Resources from Dr. Samah will be shared by her and also by Dr. Zainab, which is one of her colleagues at her clinic. Also from the ISIP and my colleague, Sister Fatima, Sister Ruqayya, and myself, we will share some links and some resources from ISIP, our WhatsApp groups, our social media platforms, and our YouTube channel. So this will be informed. And if you guys want to join the movement, the details on how you guys can join the movement will be shared. A little bit about this. We have also done throughout the month healing resilience circles connected to Palestine for all those who are directly or indirectly affected by the situation in Palestine. It's been very appreciated by all those who participate, and we tend to our intention and niyyah is to continue these spaces. We also have established within the ISIP, the International Students of Islamic Psychology, a crisis support group. So we have a WhatsApp group link to that where you guys can join if you want to have a space to discuss how to handle crisis, how we can support each other during times of trials and tribulations. And also we have established a task force called the Trauma Healing Track, where we're trying to work with how we can support from an Islamic psychological point of view and also from a mental health point of view different types of trauma and healing processes. So we're trying to look at how we can support people that are, being affected by natural catastrophes like earthquakes, to occupation, colonization, genocides, etc. And if you're interested, you're more than welcome to join these initiatives as well. So without any further ado, we will start the webinar today. Today, we will speak with Dr. Samah with regards to the reconceptualization of mental health in the context of Palestine with Dr. Samah Jabr from Palestine. SubhanAllah, we're very honored to host you, dear Ustada. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today's agenda will be, we will recite Surah Al-Fatiha together just to get the blessings from Allah Azza wa Jal. After that, I will do some brief welcoming and guidelines of the webinar and session. And then we will listen to Dr. Samah Jabr, and it will not be a lecture. It will be more like a conversation between Dr. Samah and myself. And then after that, we will involve your reflections and questions as well, dear excellent brothers and sisters and colleagues and scholars and students from all over the world. And finally, we will share some forms and also doing, inshallah, some closing du'as as well, inshallah. Bismillah. A little bit about Zoom etiquettes, dear brothers and sisters. Feel free to have your cameras on if you want. It's always great to connect with each other if it's possible. No recording or screenshots are allowed. We will share the recording in a couple of days on our YouTube channel, which will be shared in the Zoom chat and emailed to you guys as well. Keep muted at all times, actually, because it will make the webinar much smoother. If you want, rename yourself, because it's always good to see that we're colleagues and members and brothers and sisters from all over the world. This is the strength of this movement, you know. So feel free to write your name and your country, or whether it's where you live today. You can always utilize the chat option of Zoom, of course, as I mentioned earlier. And if you need live transcriptions, dear excellent colleagues, brothers and sisters, please feel free to press the More button in the Zoom application and request for it, and then we will give access to that, inshallah. All right. A little bit about ISIP and our mission statement. So ISIP, the International Students of Islamic Psychology, we try to be an inclusive space designed to connect people with diverse backgrounds interested in the field of Islamic psychology and Muslim mental health. As you guys know, psychology has been a tradition of study in Islamic thought for over 1,000 years. So subhanAllah, we're blessed to have a big psychological tradition in Islamic thought. We also aim to disseminate knowledge, share resources, and discuss best practices in a free and accessible manner. So everything that ISIP does, as much as possible, we try to keep it free so that everybody, no matter which social, economic, or background one have, can benefit from the sacred knowledge. We also want to be a platform to enable further development of people's personal and professional interests, studies, and understanding of Islamic psychology and Muslim mental health within their communities and countries of origin. So ISIP has local chapters in 30 countries. We have it all over the Arab world. We have also a physical place that we're starting to establish in Egypt as well. We have it in the Indo-Pac region in Southeast Asia and Europe and North America, South America, and many African countries from West Africa to South Africa as well. Ways that to participate in the movement, feel free to subscribe to ISIP's YouTube channel, dear brothers and sisters. We have over 250 lectures with different scholars within the field and practitioners within the field of Islamic psychology and Muslim mental health. As I saw some of our ISIP's advisory board members, like Professor Mohammed Khalili. I saw his name in the Zoom chat now. So we have some of the leading scholars doing lectures for us, and we're very honored to have them as part of our chapters, our works, our research center, Al-Balkhi Institute, and also our advisory board. So feel free to subscribe. You can also join our Islamic Psychology WhatsApp group for research sharing. This link will be shared by Sister Fatima, Sister Ruqayya, my excellent colleagues in the Zoom chat. You can become a member of ISIP, which is free, via our website at www.isip.foundation, where you can also get access to our digital library, where we have over 1,000 resources connected to Islamic psychology and Muslim mental health, free of charge as well. And as I mentioned, we have many different task forces beyond our local and regional chapter. We have a research center, online Islamic psychology counseling platform, and we also have the task force for trauma healing, for tarbiyah, for parenting, for Islamic psychology supervision, etc. So if you want to join these task forces, feel free to go through our website or email us at contact@isip.foundation or join our WhatsApp groups. This is a way to join. This is the QR code. If you want to join, you can use it now. And we will also share the link throughout the session as well, inshallah. So let's go to the main person of this venue today, Dr. Samah Jabr. She is a psychiatrist practicing within East Jerusalem and the West Bank. She's the head of the mental health unit within the Palestinian MOH. She has taught on several Palestinian universities affiliated with George Washington University, where she is an associate clinical professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences. She's a trainer of CBT, MHGAP, Istanbul Protocol for the documentation of torture and treatment package for drug addiction. Dr. Samah often serves as a consultant for international organizations like Bet Salem and Al-Damir. She authored the book Beyond the Front Lines, and I don't speak French, unfortunately, so Derrière les fronts, chronique de psychiatrie, psychothérapie, palestinienne sur occupation. Tried my best. I speak Spanish, but alhamdulillah, at least a little bit. Published by PMN in 2017, which appeared in French, Italian, and Portuguese. And the book SUMUD, Résister à l'oppression, published in Italian by Sensibili Fuglie. Sorry, my Italian is not that good either, in 2021. She's also an author of several Arabic professional manuals and guidebook, one of them on suicide prevention, won the 2021 prize of Arab PsychNet. Alhamdulillah, shukrullah. Dr. Jabr is also a founding member of the Palestine Global Mental Health Network. So alhamdulillah, shukrullah. Before I stop sharing my screen so we can start the discussions with Dr. Samah, dear brothers and sisters and participants, leave your feedback here using this QR code. Your feedback is very valuable as a way for us to further develop and strengthen our webinars, inshallah. And please forgive us for any shortcomings and make dua for us, and please fill out the short feedback form in the end. So without any further ado, I will just stop sharing my screen, inshallah. Just 1 second, please. There it goes. And let me just go now to the questions and answers that we will do now. Just 1 second, please. Thank you. So thank you so much, Dr. Samah, for joining us today. Feel free to unmute yourself, and we're very honored to have you. But we have over 200 people right now in the webinar as well. So this is really an important topic for many of us. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much, Brother Sayed, for this kind invitation. And thank you for organizing this event. Thanks for the organization and for your colleagues who participated in that. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you today and to talk about what's happening in Palestine. I think those are very dark days, and shedding some light on what's taking place in Palestine is very helpful to Palestinians, but also helpful to preserve the humanity and the common morality in the world.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for stating that, Dr. Samah. And the honor is ours, honestly. We wish we can do so much more for both you and all of our colleagues and all of our brothers and sisters in Palestine. I hope this can be at least something of khair, at least for us to be able to mobilize and support you guys, inshallah. Thank you so much, Dr. Samah. I speak from the behalf of ISIP and also all the participants today, all of our brothers and sisters. We really appreciate your efforts. We're looking forward to learn from you. How are you, by the way? How is your family, Dr. Samah? How's your colleagues? Everything good with everyone?
As I said, it's not an easy time in Palestine. I come from Jerusalem. Yeah. I work in the West Bank. I'm responsible for all mental health activities in the West Bank. On the 7th of October, we understood that the daily life will change a lot for us, not only for people in Gaza. So it was my last day of clinical work in the West Bank in Nablus. I went to Gaza. We started hearing the revengeful incitement against Palestinians. By the way, I just want to make sure that you hear me clearly. Is there any echo?
No, it's perfect. The sound is perfect. Maybe we should ask the participants. Is the sound okay, dear brothers and sisters? Okay, it seems like it's okay.
Yes. Great. I just wanted to make sure. So on the 7th of October, we understood that there would be a big change. There were retaliatory statements from Israeli politicians and Western diplomats and officials who expressed their relentless support to Israel and Israel's right to defend itself. And then on that day, we heard Israeli army IDF President Gallant, who said that Palestinians are animals. Israeli President Herzog, who said everyone in Gaza is responsible for the attacks, and Western politicians and Israeli politicians were creating a parallel between what happened on October the 7th and ISIS and what happened on September the 11th. So we understood that there will be a revengeful action. In Jerusalem, where I live, repression is unprecedented now. People can be arrested for their feelings, for their opinion. We already witnessed the detention of more than 2,000 Palestinians, 2,400 Palestinians from the West Bank and Jerusalem over the past few days. And I have to say also that 4 of those who were detained just died. They died just after their detention. So you can imagine how brutal the process of detention is. That's the situation in Jerusalem and the West Bank. And I would like to mention it because it's somehow forgotten, as our hearts are wrenching for what's taking place in Gaza. We know more about what's taking place in Gaza, but also in the West Bank and Jerusalem, things are becoming very difficult.
Thank you so much for sharing this and for grounding us in the situation right now for all of you within Palestine. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy. The dehumanization is for sure there, as you say, the statements from both international political leaders and also the Israeli representatives are, you know, a source of dehumanization, as you're also mentioning. And we make dua that things will turn out well, inshallah, for all of you in Palestine. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Samah, with regards to the title of our webinar with you today, Reconceptualization of Mental Health in the Context of Palestine. Could you tell us first, dear Dr. Samah, from your own experience, how is it conceptualized right now, and why do we need to reconceptualize?
Listen, I just want to say, to give you a brief description of mental health services and mental health practice in Palestine. We mainly depend on international organizations working in Palestine. We have Médecins du Monde, Médecins Sans Frontières, WHO supports mental health, and a few other international organizations. I'm responsible for governmental services. Governmental services compose about 47% of mental health services. In my role as the head of governmental mental health services, I collaborate a lot with international NGOs working in this field in creating national strategies for suicide prevention, national mental health strategy, and the prominent conceptualization of mental health that is influenced by donation is the biopsychosocial. And it is understood that there are many individuals who suffer, and we need to provide them with individual support. For some of the international NGOs, for example, the access to this is the ICD-10 or ICD-11 diagnosis. So you need to get the code in order to benefit from the service. Now, if you are grieving, if you are oppressed and you suffer a lot, but you don't have the label, you don't get the service. If you are crushed by power dynamics, you don't have the service. Many people get the diagnosis of PTSD, and I have argued that in the Palestinian experience, there is no P. Of course, there is trauma and traumatic reactions, but the traumatic reaction exhibited by many people is different than the Western description of PTSD, which better captures the experience of a soldier who goes to the battlefield and return to the safety of his home. We can talk more about this later, but I've been trying to integrate the component of human rights and the understanding of power dynamics in our conceptualization of mental health, and also the collective aspect of the Palestinian experience. So much of the trauma is collective, and I think the best way to intervene is within the community and in a collective manner. I've also argued that we need to observe what Palestinians do to help each other and build our interventions on these grassroots efforts. Let me give one example. I observed in one interview that I made with a woman from Jericho, from the refugee camp Samah Jabr. She told me that she was grieving for the loss of her son. Her son was killed due to military violence. So she said that she was in a desperate state. And then the mothers of the martyrs in Jenin came to visit her. And they talked about their personal experience and how they got over their grief and loss and were empowered by other women. This is an example of psychological intervention that stemmed from the people without any intervention from an expert. And I think we mental health professionals, we need to listen to people carefully and understand what helps them best, and try to capitalize on this, to build our interventions according to this. Another example, one time a traumatized child who was beaten many times, he was detained many times, and every time he was tortured. And maybe he sustained a brain concussion in one of the events. So he comes to my psychiatric clinic because his family wants him to give him an intervention to calm his behavior. He came out of detention not respecting the authority of the father, not respecting the structure of school, refusing to go back to school. And of course, when he was brought to a psychiatric clinic, he had high resistance. So he told me, I'm talking about 14-year-old boy, he told me, after all what happened, now they want to treat me like a crazy person. I don't want to be in that place. And I completely supported him. And we agreed that he can go and meet other young people who lived a similar experience in a group, and that group is led by an Aikido coach. So, and this Aikido coach has mental health skills so that he can contribute low intensity interventions to help these children, these minors, without pathologizing their experience and their pain, without diagnosing it. This was much, it was received in a much better way by this child and other people like him. So this is how I conceptualize mental health intervention in Palestine. We need to take into consideration the collective aspect, the power dynamics, and the harm that can result on people's spirits and psyches because of the crushing power dynamics. And one last thing that I want to add, I listen to what comes from Gaza now, to the statements of people while they are rescuing family members under the rubble. It's obvious that the sentences that come from the religious belief or from their nationalistic convictions are very important resource for resilience. So we need to build on these convictions and belief system wherever it is there, wherever people express it. The mental health professional need to consider that as a very strong pillar for resilience, for sumud. That's the word that puzzled you in the title of the book. Sumud is the Arabic Palestinian word that we use for resilience. And maybe later I can explain the difference between sumud and resilience.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, Bara. Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Samah, for your inputs and reflections. And I really resonate with it. I mean, even though I'm not in Palestine, but I live as a refugee in the West, and we have a big Palestinian diaspora here. And not only Palestinian, a lot of Muslims here in the diaspora of Europe. I tend to also see both the racism and some of the psychological treatments that are rooted in mainstream psychology and the way that they approach, people who have suffered from trauma or from wars or genocides, but also, as you say, to have the grassroots aspect. You're connecting Aikido to health for this young boy. Actually, there is an Indonesian brother, a close colleague of mine. His name is Hakim. They call him. He's a master of Aikido, brother Hakim, and they call him Sensei Hakim. So he has created an aspect of Aikido in his approach to work with young men that is connected to the tradition of Fatwa in Islam, which is chivalrous behavior, and how you can use Aikido to create resilience, or sumud, as you say, and also to bring a path for healing. It's very interesting. So to see that connection also and what you noticed from your clients and from this case that you said is very interesting, and it's a holistic approach. What you're also mentioning, which I think could be a good guidance and a to us from your experience and expertise, Dr. Samah, is the collective efforts when it comes to mental health, the family, the connection, not only the nucleus family, because I believe sometimes the nucleus family is nothing that is fully applicable to Islamic paradigm. We do believe in nucleus family, but we believe that the village needs to be raising the child together. We see that in Gaza now, how people are coming together, and also, of course, in the whole Palestine. So the whole aspect, as you say, that you see that societal structure as evident in the health of a person and a collective is very interesting, at least. And this is contrary to the individualization of psychological health that we can see in individualistic context, an individualistic society rather than collective society. So thank you for all these great reminders, Dr. Samah. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Samah, because you said that you will speak about the PTSD label a little bit later, but maybe we can start, because you started to reflect upon it. You wrote a very interesting article that I actually had the honor to read, and I will really recommend to all the participants here, and I will ask your colleague, if possible, Dr. Samah, Dr. Zainab, if you can share the link to some of the articles of Dr. Samah in the chat, and we will email it out, inshallah, or maybe Sister Fatima or Sister Ruqayya, my colleagues, can do it. From the website, The Middle East Eye, amazing website, by the way. I follow them. I really appreciate all the efforts they're doing. You wrote an article recently with the title, Why U.S. Mental Health Associations Justify Israel's Genocidal Attack on Gaza. I would like you to, if possible, if you can explain a little bit about this article and your critique and feedback, and also perhaps after that we can speak a little bit about your critique when it comes to diagnosis from DSM, some of them.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there was unprecedented Western support to Israel vengeance on Palestinians. That was not limited to diplomats, politicians, and media, but even professional, medical, mental health associations participated in that. And I find it as a big shame that the American Psychiatric Association contributed to that. They issued a statement stepping over the centuries of occupation of Palestinians, not mentioning the collective historical trauma of Palestinians, and especially of those living in Gaza, in the biggest concentration camp for 2 centuries, almost for two decades, and calling the acts of Palestinians as anti-Semitic, and stressing on Israel's right to defend itself. And as I read that statement, I understood that they legitimize the genocide and the attack that will be brought upon Palestinians. Interestingly, this was issued on the 11th of October. One day before, on the 10th of October, was the World's Mental Health Day, and the theme for this year was human rights, mental health and human rights. So there was complete disregard for the human rights of Palestinians, no mention that we are an occupied nation, as if history started on the 7th of October. And part of my practice as a mental health professional is my involvement in advocacy. And I challenge power structures. And in this case, I challenge the statement of the American Psychiatric Association. And I wrote my response to stress all the important things that were eliminated by the statement of the American Psychiatric Association. And I know that many colleagues in respected mental health associations in Jordan, in Syria, in Iraq, they wrote to the American Psychiatric Association. And I think this practice is good. It's important to challenge within our field, mental health associations, that for so long, the Palestinian cause was hushed by the principles of neutrality and impartiality. Whenever we wanted to bring human rights of Palestinians and the crushing occupational power that damages the quality of life and the well-being of Palestinians, we were hushed by international NGOs who were very keen on the concept of impartiality and neutrality. Now, this hypocrisy was exposed during the war on Ukraine. It became very trendy that mental health professionals and mental health associations express their sympathy and their support of the people in Ukraine. And that's okay. I remember being in one of the conferences, the Global Mental Health Summit in Italy, and it was opened by the First Lady, Olena Zelensky. So suddenly, mental health associations became tolerant to the political cause and the impact of violence on people. So that's good. But now, the American Association, they bypass this principle of neutrality and impartiality, not to speak on behalf of the oppressed and the people who have been suffering for so long, but to side with Israel in a blatant way. And I think this needs to be challenged, and they should be ashamed for their work and for their statement.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samah, for this clear message. And it's sad to see, like, how can you be impartial when it comes to human life? How can you be impartial when it comes to genocide and war crimes? How can you be impartial of dehumanization of people and the psychological effects of, occupation, colonization, dehumanization? It's very sad. And as all of us who are interested in psychology, we know there are both good and bad roots in the science of psychology. At least psychology was used historically from the colonizing countries to colonize minds as well, and also as a tool of dehumanization of the countries that were colonized and the people that were subjugated by colonization. So this is the, perhaps the negative history of the science of psychology, at least mainstream Western psychology. But of course, there is good things in the history of psychology. Not all Western psychology is bad. I mean, I'm thinking about Viktor Frankl and the father of logotherapy, and what he suffered and how he found meaning when he came out from Auschwitz, and he created the logotherapy as a modality, meaning-making therapy, which is part of the Islamic way of looking at psychology of trials and tribulations. And that's something beautiful. And he was also a person who used his experience to say what happened to me should never happen to anybody else again. He didn't go into the fascistic way of instead saying what happens to me should never happen to me again. He actually found relief in his own trajectory in life, and he was also a critique of Zionism as an ideology, and he has Jewish background himself. And now to see that a lot of psychological associations are not even taking stand for human life, when a lot of the psychological modalities and the founders of a lot of the psychological modalities were always seeking to restore human life through the interventions of psychology as a science, is very sad. It's a detachment from the beautiful parts of the history of psychology, but we also know that there are some ugly things in the history of psychology as well. So it's very sad. But I think that your advocacy, Dr. Samah, inshallah, with all of you, all of us, hopefully can be at your support as well, that we can change paradigms. And actually, Dr. Samah, we have seen within the ISIP and all of our colleagues that a lot of people are doing now as psychological associations and people that want to show solidarity with the Palestinian cause. They're doing like surveys, and they're doing like action points to really affect all these national psychological bodies as well. So these are some good initiatives that are going on, and we really recommend all of you participants to continue doing this excellent work. Dr. Samah, with regards to also a thing that I find very interesting, and just maybe as asking you with regards to that, what would you suggest us to do as an international movement to affect the psychological associations in our countries? Do you have like any nasiha and guidance for us and how we can change the narrative so that this impartiality doesn't become dehumanization of Palestinians? What is your nasiha to us?
Well, It depends on how much time and involvement you want to put and to invest in this. I think we need a lot of help. First, to generate knowledge from the Palestinian experience. Part of the attack on Palestinians is silencing us and hushing people by intimidating them, or at least preventing any facilitation from getting our knowledge to a wider audience. Also, Palestinian mental health professionals are overwhelmed. We are overworked and we are overwhelmed with what's happening around us, to the point that we are on the doing mode all the time. We don't have enough time to reflect on what's happening. I think it's very important to document testimonies from the Palestinian experience. Doctors in general, and psychiatrists and mental health professionals, we are very intimate to people. Like we listen to the first-hand experiences of people. And I think the lessons learned from people's experience should not stay in the therapy room. We can generate knowledge that help us reflect more on our reality. And I think that international mental health professionals can learn a lot from Palestine. It's important to help us documenting and writing and generating knowledge, having access to international journals. The process of publishing in international journals is very colonial, in my opinion. It is structured in a way that eliminates the voices of marginalized people who are economically vulnerable, who cannot, for example, to participate in an international conference will require the monthly salary of a Palestinian psychiatrist. So like that, you will rarely have Palestinian psychiatrists who will go and participate. Many journals will ask us to pay in order to get published. Also, the process of footnoting and writing in a language that is not our native language is a difficult one, which leaves us and our knowledge marginalized. So I think internationals who have the capacity to help in this effort, that would be very good. Co-author papers from the Palestinian reality with Palestinians, collaborate with certain individuals, with clinicians working in Palestine. You will learn important lessons and you will help Palestinians to get their stories out. You can also help us in challenging the dominant structures of mental health associations that are so sensitive to the Israeli narrative, and so oblivion to the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian plight. Especially those of you who speak foreign languages and who know the mindset of people in the West, I think you can play an important role in sensitizing international mental health organizations to the Palestinian reality. I want to mention a few associations, maybe you have heard of some of them. Solidarity associations within the field of mental health. Palestinians have a network called Palestine Global Mental Health Network, and we have sister networks of professionals who express solidarity to Palestinians, and they are being active, writing and documenting stories from Palestine now. Some of these networks are the USA Palestine Mental Health Network, the UK Palestine Mental Health Network, and Ireland Palestine Mental Health Network. We need more of them. I know colleagues from Italy who are ready to do something like that, colleagues in France, colleagues in South Africa. So it's good to, usually it's retired psychologists who take the initiative and have the time to invest in this. I think having young people like you students to support their efforts, it will be very, very good. It will contribute to the maintenance of this international effort to shed light on the reality in Palestine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samah. This is something that we want to be involved. Our movement is actually not only students, Dr. Samah. I know it says students, but we mean student seekers of knowledge. So we do have a lot of mental health professionals. Of course, we all are students. We learn from you and all of our great leaders. Definitely, this is something that we can help. And we have a big international mental health network in our movement. So inshallah, this will be one of our action items, inshallah, according to your nasiha and guidance. So actually, I want to ask Sister Fatima, could you please share the crisis support group WhatsApp group link? We want to invite all of you brothers and sisters who want to be part of this effort that Dr. Samah wants us to do. We will organize this and work with the different networks and organizations that Dr. Samah also mentioned and to support them, inshallah. And one thing I really think that could be very good is the whole research thing you say, because you're right. I mean, it's not only with Palestinians. It's like it is a lot of discrimination when it comes to how to release articles in different journals. So when we unite in this effort, we can definitely bring in more voices from the Palestinian mental health professionals like yourself who have the experience and that we want to share your findings and your research in different platforms. So we will be more than happy, Dr. Samah, to be at your and your colleagues' service in this. And we do have connections with a lot of journals internationally all over the world. So definitely this is also something that we can do. So dear brothers and sisters, if you guys are scholars yourself or researchers and you want to help Dr. Samah and all of our Palestinian colleagues and mental health professionals when it comes to research, feel free to join the crisis support group WhatsApp group that Sister Fatima will share in the chat. And we will definitely find ways to do that, inshallah. We have a lot of initiatives. We have actually one brother Ahmed from Turkey. He's leading our research center now, the Al-Balkhi Institute, and our plan is to support Palestinian brothers and sisters who want to do more research through our international measures and efforts, inshallah. So, Dr. Samah, these are really good guidance and nasiha. And I wanted to ask you, you speak a lot about the power in therapeutic work, like how we can establish some form of therapeutic work that will bring this resilience. Would you like to explain more about this whole aspect of therapeutic work being a way of empowering people from your experience? I know you mentioned a little bit already, but I would love if you would like to reflect upon that a little bit more, please.
Son, I even think that the therapeutic work is an integral part of the project of national liberation. So when we talk about liberating Palestine, it's not only about liberating land. It's about liberating people's minds. Because if we leave Palestinians without a therapeutic work at the collective level, if there is no resistance among Palestinians, like any other oppressed group, Palestinians will internalize a feeling of inferiority. When the world doesn't see us as humans and refuses the application of human rights for Palestinians and ignores all the violation and condones war crimes against us, sometimes we know in psychology people will start feeling like that. Individual trauma, brother, causes a damage to the nervous system. A collective trauma can cause damage to the social fabric, where an oppressed people become envious, distrusting each other, competing for the leftovers of that the master leaves behind them. Even worse, some of us can become fascinated with the aggressor, trusting the Israeli lawyer and the Israeli journalist, and hoping to be treated in an Israeli hospital because they are superior and we are inferior. Only moments of resistance and confrontation between the oppressed and the oppressor can correct this thing. So, of course, we need to analyze all these phenomena. in the Palestinian community and other oppressed groups, and help people be aware of them, and help people liberate themselves when they can understand power dynamics and the effects of the collective trauma on the society. They can be mentally liberated from the sense of inferiority and the fascination with the aggressor. That's why the therapeutic work is very important. It's not, I don't think that this can be best achieved by individual sessions. It is the discourse within the Palestinian society. It's the discussions that we have in public, on webinars, on radio, on TV, the articles that we write in the mainstream media, in the newspaper. This discourse can has a liberating effect on people. And I also claim that international solidarity with Palestinians is very therapeutic. Because when international regimes deny us, doubt the numbers of our victims, when Biden tells Netanyahu, but I'm sure you're not the ones responsible for Al-Ahli hospital massacre. This is called lack of validation and denial in psychological terms. And when we see people in London going in masses in the streets, marching for the rights of Palestinians, this is validating. This is important. At a psychological level, demonstrations, international solidarity is very, very therapeutic for Palestinians. Now, the problem is that it is psychologically helpful, but it has not proven so far to be politically effective. So we need to think together how to make it politically effective. But I don't want to underestimate the importance of the psychological solidarity and the psychological, I see people, I hear people in Palestine reacting to any gesture of international solidarity, and they are, it's very important for supporting them and for recognizing their humanity. And it corrects the official denial and lack of validation for the Palestinian experience.
SubhanAllah. Thank you so much for clarifying that, Dr. Samah, because I think that for a lot of us who are not in Palestine, sometimes we feel even more helpless, like, especially if you don't have any power to, affect the politics directly, or let's say the narrative or the media narratives or whatever. But what you're saying is that the person who is demonstrating, the person who is sharing posts on social media, the person who has the intention of empowering things that could be of measurement for the humanization process of Palestine, it affects actually from a psychological level as well. So this is really a good nasiha to give to all of us here, all brothers and sisters, that actually when you're demonstrating, you're in a sense part of the collective effort of decolonization of psychology and reconnecting all of our brothers and sisters in Palestine to their fitra and their humanity, in that sense. And we're all born in the state of fitra, by the way, so that's something that makes us human in a sense. So this is a really beautiful nasiha, and this encourages, I think, a lot of us to continue our works. We just say, I live in Sweden, by the way, so I thought about the Stockholm syndrome now when you spoke about almost like wanting to get the recognition from the oppressor. So is this like so this is a thing that you see in the Palestinian context? Because for sure we can see it in other contexts as well. I just thought about the Stockholm syndrome because I live here.
It's not exactly the Stockholm syndrome where you I don't think that at any point Palestinians were identifying with the point of view of Israelis. But sometimes people, Palestinians went through many different phases in their relationship to Israelis and the international community. And we know that there were moments of resistance, and in these moments of resistance, I think this contributes to this liberates Palestinians from the legacy of oppression. But when in bad times, we know that there are Palestinian collaborators and Palestinians who have surrendered and Palestinians who accepted a job where they protect the best interest of Israelis. They protect the settlements in the West Bank instead of protecting the villages in the West Bank. So I don't think they do it because they adopt the point of view of Israelis. They do it because I think some believe that their personal survival is more important than the collective survival. Because they believe that if they side with the oppressor, maybe they will be exempted from the punishment, from the collective punishment. So there are other mental dynamics that lead to that conclusion and that choice in life. And I don't think that Palestinians are any different than any oppressed nation. I've read a lot about Latin America and Africa and oppressed people in different parts of the world. And there are those who resist and those who surrender and those who collaborate. Every society has its heroes and has people who betray the society. And I think in this confrontation, it's the spring of those who are defiant to the power dynamics and colonization. It's the springtime for them.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
In spite of all the revenge and all the horror that's being implemented on Palestinians.
Alhamdulillah. We see the Palestinian brothers and sisters yourselves as our role models. Honestly, you guys make us alive, you know. And honestly, you're so right in this. And this is the psychology of occupation, and we don't blame anyone. I mean, this is just a reality. This is a sociological and psychological reality, as you say. And we have seen it in many other, as you say, situations all over the world. Where people tend to use different path as a way of survival, and we can see it in our own Islamic history as well. Would you say, Dr. Samah, with regards to, I think a lot of our colleagues would love to know more about how does one day in your work look like? Like if you can explain for us, it would be good for us to understand. That's also a way for us to be connected with you. Like is it like for us, we would love to know, like, how does the work of a mental health professional working inside Palestine look like on a daily basis?
Okay, now I work from home. I work online because it's not safe to commute from Jerusalem to the West Bank to Ramallah. My office is based in Ramallah, but my activities are all over the West Bank. I used to go to Nablus, to Hebron. It depends on the colleagues and the activities that I run in these different places. In the morning, I work as a policymaker in mental health, where I meet with other stakeholders, other mental health institutions, and we discuss plans, strategies, mental health response to emergencies, and so on. In the afternoon, I work as a clinician. I also work as a supervisor, a local and a regional supervisor for mental health. My activities with the WHO took me to Afghanistan, and I learned a lot from there. I went there to train on the mental health gap, the kit by the WHO. I also used to go to Gaza to collaborate with colleagues at a clinical level and at an administrative level. And my frequent visits to Gaza make me emotionally more connected and more affected by what's taking place there. And I would like to share with you some of my observations in Gaza. the first time I went there, I wrote an article about, I think the title was Gaza the Betrayed. Crossing through Erez checkpoint from the Israeli side to the Gazan side, it's like going 100, 150 years back in history in terms of modernity and the buildings. Psychosocial determinants for health are very difficult in Gaza. Unemployment is very high, 60%. Food insecurity is very high. Poverty, anemia levels are very high. Yet, and you probably know, a 15-year-old boy has lived multiple wars. And most of the people in Gaza were never out of Gaza. Crossing through the checkpoint also, the Eretz checkpoint, I saw the laborers, the few laborers in Gaza who were standing, speechless, motionless, to be allowed to enter to the Israeli side to work there. And I describe this as a portrait of slavery, to see those old tired faces who just want to get out of Gaza to get some income and living to their families. So it's very difficult. Crossing, there are also 3 authorities that check my papers. I need to issue for a permission. Most of the Palestinians cannot go to Gaza. Only a few of us who work with medical missions. And we need an Israeli permission. I apply for the Israeli permission and I get it a month later or 2 months later. And sometimes I'm refused this permission. I obtained it on a few occasions. And in order to cross, I crossed through 3 authorities. The Israeli authority, and then the authority of Ramallah, the Palestinian authority of Ramallah, they have an office there, and then the authority of Gaza. So Gaza, which is geographically so close from Jerusalem, seems very distant in terms of complications and obstacles in order to reach there. I also observed that the colleagues that I trained there are very eager to meet someone from outside. For them, this is a practical break of the sense of isolation. I train in many parts in Palestine and in the region, but I've never observed people as diligent as the trainees in Gaza. They wouldn't miss any moment. And they are very refined people, very generous, very poor, and yet very generous when they meet with me. Generous, not in materialistic means. Generous in their time, in their curiosity. They want to learn a lot about Jerusalem and about the West Bank. They ask many questions. I walk through the allies of the little and the little streets in Gaza and in the camps, and I see slogans and graffiti on the walls, sending messages of encouragement for Sheikh Jarrah, for Nablus, for Jenin. So it's shocking that this very small and poor and tired and forgotten place is so caring about us when we care less. And that's why I call it Gaza the Betrayed. And that was my feeling before the latest attack. But now with this carnage, with this ethnic cleansing and genocide in Gaza, when that is happening, like doctors in Gaza then send their last messages, send their photos. We know everything about what's taking place, and yet no one can stop what's taking place there. So that's much worse than betrayal. That's a collapse of humanity. That's a collapse of morality for the world. And I hope that soon Gaza will rise from the rubble. And on the day Gaza rises from the rubble, this will be the announcement for the collapse of Western humanity.
I mean, let's make dua for that, inshallah. And so powerful to listen to you, Dr. Samah, and we wish that we can be a better service for you and all of your, amazing colleagues. But at least we try our best. And what is giving us hope is to see someone like you and your colleagues dedicating their lives to, as you say, install humanity in our, in the context of psychology, and also that actually we can all utilize our professional backgrounds to be a servant of the Palestinian cause. So psychology is definitely, because sometimes people ask, what psychology? Like, what is that? Like, why do we need to speak about that right now? And actually, we should speak about everything, including psychology as well. Like, we're not saying don't speak about other things, but this is important. And we have seen the resilience of the Gaza people, but we also have seen, as you say, the solidarity that the Gaza people have to the rest of the world. And yet the rest of the world is blind, is becoming more and more blinded and also numbed. And it made me reflect upon one thing, Dr. Samah. And after this reflection, I thought I will bring in some questions from the audience as well. But I was thinking about when the Mughals came and invaded the whole Middle East 1,000 years ago. And when they came to Baghdad, and, if you read the chronicles of that time, that was like, slaughtering millions of people, destroying all libraries and, hospitals that was in the center of, the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad. And, the stories of, the river of Tigris was red of the blood of the martyrs and black of the ink of all the books that was like burned down, And then I was thinking about the situation in Palestine today. And then one of my teachers, subhanAllah, he said to me that actually what the people did after this whole of the siege in Baghdad and everything that happened afterwards, that they re-spiritualized themselves even more. They became even more stronger in their faith and in their iman, and subhanAllah, after 2-3 generations, even the Mughals who conquered, they became Muslim, a lot of them actually, and they changed their hearts even, It's a very interesting story of how things can change. And this is something we see amongst the Gaza people, of what we are noticing, even though we're not there, that the spirituality is so strong, and we see that in the statements and the reflections from what you're saying with the whole aspect of compassion, which is part of our religion. And also, I think it's important for us to bring about that we can use our culture and religion as a source of healing. And at the same time, the cause of Palestine is not a religious cause only, it's a humanity cause. We have Palestinian Muslims and Christians and Jews that are suffering, and sometimes we tend to think that it's a religious war. This is about freedom. This is about humanity. This is a political situation. This is colonization. This is occupation. And we have a lot of Palestinians that are Christians as well, and of course Muslims. And we have Palestinian Jews historically as well, and they still exist today. So I think this is some things that we learn from our tradition. And Dr. Samah, one thing you said that I reflected upon was like Omar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. When he came to Jerusalem, the first question he asked, where's the Jews? Where's the Jews? And then the Jews were not there because they were killed by the Besant regime, who were oppressing the Jews actually, and they were themselves oppressors. And then they said, no, they're not here. They're not here. And then actually Omar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu asked his companions to bring some Jewish family and resettle them back in Jerusalem. And this is the compassionate way that we as Muslims are seeing in the Palestinian people, that even though they're going through the occupation, they're not saying things against other people, other religious, other faith groups, even though they're suffering. And this is something very remarkable and very admirable, and that we take as inspiration, both from our own sacred tradition and also as inspiration from our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Dear Dr. Samah, there are some great questions in the chat. I will try to take a couple of them because there are a lot. So Sister Saiqa, she's saying, Assalamu alaikum. I'm not from a psychology background, so apologize for my questions come across as silly. But the trauma that people endure in Palestine is higher than the average person, but the level of Iman is also unmatchable and so high. Also, many of the people who are providing support have experienced the same trauma. There is a common misconception that low Iman is the reason that people need help psychologically. So when you have a nation whose Iman and belief is so high and they have all endured the same, then accessing psychological support, where does that fit in with the average person? So I guess that's the question there. So when you have a nation whose Iman and belief is so high and they have all endured the same, then accessing psychological support, where does that fit in with the average person?
I will say a few words about that. The trauma of the Palestinian people is different than the typical trauma described in books in the DSM. The trauma is enduring, repetitive, collective, transgenerational, historical, passing from one generation to another, not only by the history and the narrative and the way of life, but also the genes. Our grandparents were dispossessed in 48. Their children, who are our fathers, fought against the occupation. They were detained and tortured. And now the younger generation has gone through multiple intifadas and multiple confrontations. There are people who are affected personally, who find themselves in a traumatic confrontation. But even if you are not one of those, there are circles of traumatic grief around you. Every Palestinian knows a classmate, a family member, a friend who was killed or detained or tortured by the occupation. So the impact is so prevalent, and it doesn't give I think it is so prevalent and so chronic to the point that it doesn't cause the typical PTSD symptoms like hypervigilance, re-experiencing, and avoidance. It changes our worldview. It changes our core belief system. Hypervigilance, which is considered as a traumatic symptom in the experience of a soldier who went back to the safety of his home, is not pathological in our case. We need to be hypervigilant to avoid harm. We need to be aware of what's taking place. The re-experiencing is not only in our mind, it's in our reality. So in that way, the trauma is different. Now, having said that, I want to say a few things about Iman. It's not true that people who become symptomatic have a problem in their Iman. This is a big mistake that sometimes people think that a person who suffers psychologically is less faithful or his personality is weaker than another. At the same time, the capacity to generate meaning and a positive meaning from the suffering can be very helpful in dealing with trauma. If, for example, if a woman, we know the pain of giving birth. If you see that, okay, I endure all that pain to get a baby and I want to have a baby, then you deal with the pain in a better way. So the capacity, people generate different meanings of their experiences. And those who can generate a positive meaning of their painful experiences can tolerate the traumatic effect in a better way. Also, family relations, to feel that family members care about you. Some studies in Gaza before the war showed that the majority of kids, like 80% of kids, have traumatic consequences, but at the same time, 96% think that their family is very supportive and loving. So it explains how people survive difficult situations. And I want to add here that international solidarity is very important for the endurance and the capacity of Palestinians to bypass these dark times. So help us in generating solidarity and understanding. This will contribute to Palestinian steadfastness.
MashaAllah. Barakallah feek. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Samah. We will definitely do our best. I see there's a lot of great chats, great questions in the chat. There's a lot of great reflections, and also everybody showing their deepest support for your amazing work, and also for your colleagues' amazing work. There are a couple of other questions. With your permission, Dr. Samah, I'm mindful of your time. We said 90 minutes and we're almost in the 90-minute remarks, but we started a little bit. Is it okay to, because there's so many questions that people want to hear, because I think all of us we want to learn more from. Is it okay for you? Okay, thank you, Dr. Samah. So actually, there is a great question from Brother Mahmoud. He's asking, can you please speak about the importance of not over-glorifying resilience of Palestinians? There is this online narrative that Gazans are so resilient and strong, and this may be true, especially on the spiritual and religious side. However, I feel like people may be getting this idea in a wrong way that doesn't aid in urgent action to help them. Yes, they are strong, but also it is true that so many are facing trauma, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and attempts and contemplations. I appreciate your article about context to PTSD, CPTSD, and that their reactions are normal to situations. We don't want people to think that they will be fine because if they're faith only. Rather, we need to end this genocide immediately and not put them through more because they are strong. Very interesting.
I thank you very much for your question, for your remarks. This is very true. It's important not to romanticize and over-glorify the Sumud. I think the Sumud, let me say a few words. Sumud is a word that was used in Palestinian literature much before the word resilience. Word resilience is recent in psychology. The word Sumud was used in the 1917-18 during the beginning of the British Mandate. We find it in literature, we find it in Palestinian poetry, and it describes the collective aspect of endurance and steadfastness. Resilience usually describes a mental state. Sumud describes a mental state, but also action. Action for endurance, collective action for endurance and defiance to oppression. What I understand from the word and the different ways it was used in literature is that there are personal characteristics of Sumud, but there are also external aspects that help and promote the Sumud and the resilience and the steadfastness of Palestinians. That's why I say solidarity, international solidarity, is very important, because it supports the steadfastness of Palestinians. It fuels, it nurtures the Palestinian characteristics of bearing this difficult situation. But to understand, to over-glorify it and think that Palestinians are heroes and people of a different nature who cannot be broken in this situation, that's not accurate and that's not fair. We need support so that we can endure what we endure. I think this is the statements that we hear from the people in Gaza, that they will try to do their best, but they also want people from the international community to be aware of what's taking place and to support them and to challenge hegemonic regimes so that the people can survive.
Jazakallah khairan for answering the question and for your excellent feedback and remarks, dear Dr. Samah. We're very honored to have you with us.
I want to say one
yes,
other
course.
thing about the glorification. Every nation glorifies its martyrs. Every nation. And I think the glorification comes from the collective desire to compensate the person who dies in unjust circumstances. To compensate for that injustice, we attribute superhuman qualities for the person who dies in in oppression and unjust circumstances. I visited many capitals in the world, and I saw the statue of the anonymous soldier. Every nation does that. So Palestinians are not special at glorifying their martyrs in this situation. But I think that this is not sufficient, this glorification. It is important also to understand that Palestinians are human beings who need support and protection.
Jazakallah khairan for giving us that reflections and opportunity for contemplation and tafakkur with regards to this. Thank you so much. There are a couple of other questions. Let me just thank my colleague, Sister Fatima. People were asking who's summarizing. People were asking, there's somebody in the chat summarizing what you're saying. It's Sister Fatima from ISIP. She's amazing in summarizing. So she's just summarizing all the points you're saying, Dr. Samah, in the chat. Brothers and sisters, we won't be able to ask all the questions, Dr. Samah. We'll go through 2-3 of them, and please forgive me for not being able to grasp all of them. Some of the questions I think Dr. Samah already responded. Nevertheless, Sister Fatima, Sister Ruqayya, please share all of our WhatsApp group and also our contact email, contact@isip.foundation, because we're going to take all the action items and points that Nasiya, that Dr. Samah is giving us, and we will try to mobilize and support Dr. Samah and her clinic's work, inshallah, and we will be in touch with Dr. Samah and her excellent colleagues. So we will welcome you all to join this international efforts to support Dr. Samah and their amazing work, and of course all of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. So these resources will be shared in the Zoom chat. Actually, Dr. Samah, there is a very interesting question here. There are a lot of interesting questions, but it's actually from Saida. She is asking like this: our response to Palestine has been always reactive. Do you think this is, do you see this as firefighting? And how should we focus on the long term?
Yeah, this is something that I always mention to people who want to show their solidarity for Palestinians. It's not only reactive to a big crisis. That's not sufficient. We need to do the work of little ants in a perseverance. We need to educate ourselves about the reality in Palestine and show support to Palestinians, because I think this confrontation between Palestinians and Israelis is a confrontation, is a symbolic confrontation between the South and the North, between ex-colonial powers and many oppressed nations. So it matters to many people, and it is through the Palestinian cause that we can challenge the hegemony, the Islamophobia, racism, which is dominant in the world. So today the question is Palestinians, but I don't claim that Palestinians are the only oppressed nation. I hope there will be no future oppressed nation, but I think supporting the Palestinians now is our way to challenge the Western hegemony in the world, which is a very important responsibility.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. We agree with you, I should say. And reminds me of one of the final statements of Malcolm X, rahimahullah, after he did Hajj, and he was speaking about the Palestinian cause, and he was specifically referring to what you're saying. He was speaking about all the oppressed nations, by the way. So thank you for reminding us, Dr. Samah, and for the international solidarity that we need to have beyond nationalities, of course. There is, I'll take this question as well. Actually, with regards to the other question from Brother Mahmoud, would you say that we sometimes spiritually bypass Palestinians by, speaking about, the resiliency, or is it a cultural bypassing or psychological bypassing from us, even though we see that there is this sumud, as you say? Is it easy that it becomes like almost bypassing? What do you think about that? Because I mean, spiritual bypassing is a word that we find sometimes. What is defined as spiritual bypassing? It's different definitions. Nevertheless, that was a question.
The problem, I think the risk with the resilience and sumud is that sometimes we overemphasizes in a way that rids us of responsibility to support them. That's the risk. Like we say, oh, they are so resilient, they have sumud, so we can't do anything about them. Like listening to the urgent Arab summit yesterday, which was not so urgent. It came on the 35th or 36th day of the attack, of the carnage, of bloodshed. So there were compliments for Palestinian sumud, but this is not convincing. If there is over glorification and compliment for the Palestinian sumud and no action to stop the carnage, then this is absolute hypocrisy. So please don't admire the Palestinian sumud and do your job as responsible human beings and as responsible governments to make the horrific disaster less impactful on Palestinians. So that's the critique of sumud and resilience, the exploitation of sumud and resilience.
Jazakallah khairan for giving us that feedback and reflection. It's very important, and alhamdulillah, shukrullah, we appreciate it. So this is a lot of greatness here, brothers and sisters. We have both Muslims and non-Muslims in our webinar today. Of course, ISIP is open for all people, no matter if you're Muslim or non-Muslim, most welcome. Nevertheless, it's greatness here for all of us as people in solidarity, as human in solidarity, no matter culture or religious background. Thank you for giving us this nasiyah. I will go through two questions, and then inshallah we will wrap it up with some final remarks from you, dear Dr. Samah. Thank you for giving out of your precious time. We really appreciate it. So there is a question from Denise. I wonder about the risks and prevalence of vicarious trauma amongst clinicians also. If so, how do you treat this when the service is so overwhelmed?
I used to go to Gaza to deal with these things, to treat also, among other things, vicarious trauma for doctors, because we see how doctors work now, relentlessly, without stopping. They see very difficult cases. Gazan doctors who work in the emergency room are also trained to provide psychological first aid. Gazan workers, like doctors and mental health professionals, I think they are overwhelmed now. They are not, the situation is so critical that they cannot function, and it will take a while to support them in the future. Unfortunately, without establishing a safe place and having the basic needs like food, water, drinkable water, electricity, communication, there is no room for mental health interventions. The most urgent thing is ceasefire now. And then we will rebuild mental health services. We will send mental health professionals, and I'm sure there will be many volunteers and many people who will go and help in Gaza. It will be an immense work, because I know from previous experiences that attacks at a smaller scale resulted in a lot of pain and traumatic grief. And we can imagine that the scale is much bigger this time. But the most urgent thing is ceasefire, and then we will talk about mental health services.
Jazakallah khairan.
I want to mention here also, I published a letter, I sent a letter to colleagues working in the field of mental health. Very soon it will be published on my Facebook and Instagram. So if you're interested, you can check it. It will be, it is already published in Arabic for Arabic speaking, but soon I will publish it in English.
Inshallah, we will share it in all of our groups, all of our networks. Also, brothers and sisters, those who haven't registered for today, please register, because we will share all the links, all the resources to Dr. Samah and Dr. Zainab and rest of our team's work, so that you guys can follow it, and support the works of Dr. Samah and rest of our colleagues. Dr. Samah, with regards to how we there's a lot of questions. How can we support your work personally, your work? Like you mentioned a lot of ways we can support on the meta level, but on a macro level, how can we support, like as an international, as we have so many brothers and sisters here who want to be of service, and many of them are mental health professionals. How can we support directly your works?
I think all of you are aware of how social media, international social media, tries to limit Palestinian content. So I'm not trained on, I don't know the tiny details of how to bypass the algorithm problems and difficulties. Anyone who has this knowledge and skills who can contribute to making the Palestinian content and the content that we provide in relation to mental health of Palestinians and anti-colonial psychiatry and anti-colonial mental health, we would very much appreciate if you help getting our work known and disseminated among wider groups of interested people. So please, we can communicate about it and let you know of certain messages, certain articles that we would like to get to a wider audience.
Inshallah. This is a great effort that we can do, and I recommend all of us to do it. So please follow the works of Dr. Samah, brothers and sisters who participated. The links have been shared in the Zoom from Dr. Zainab and her team and her colleagues, but we will also share through the list of all those who registered for the webinar today and in all of our groups as well, inshallah. And then the last question would be actually, and then before the summary, and by the way, that's great because we have a lot of tech savvy people, so we need to be more tech savvy. So brothers and sisters, all of the young generation that are tech savvy, please, let's break the algorithms, finding ways to reshare and repost, inshallah, because we know there is something called ghosting now that they're using to break the algorithms when it comes to Palestinian content. So we have a collective effort to do, inshallah, brothers and sisters, and all of you are very valuable in this. The last question will come. There are so many questions here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We have a question from January. Greetings, everyone. I'm January from Uganda, clinical psychology student. Doctor, how do you withstand the horrors and experiences that you pass through? How do you move on?
I think writing has been very helpful for me. I'm also a spiritual person who's busy trying to make sense and making a meaning of my experiences. I'm lucky to have wonderful family relationships and excellent relations with friends. And I think my ability to communicate my experience with audience outside Palestine and get the necessary validation and recognition and experiencing common humanity with others outside our borders has been very helpful to me. This is how I take care of myself. I also have a special hobby of gardening. I like to plant my own food. So, and this relationship to the soil and to the land, and to watch something growing, and to watch the different seasons passing by is very, very inspiring, and it contributes to my personal sumud and resilience, I think.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Thank you so much. And I had the honor to visit your beautiful country twice. And inshallah, in the future, I will come there and visit you guys and be with you guys. And inshallah, we can work together when Palestine is. Inshallah, we will be there eating kanafa. One of my best kanafa I enjoyed was in Jerusalem. And I was visiting the Al-Aqsa Masjid. And I can't, and I really met so many beautiful brothers and sisters when I was in Palestine. So I would love to go and buy some olive trees, olive fruits from you guys, and also that we enjoy, as you say, the soil, because people are so close to the nature in this context of Palestine, and the soil is so important. This is sacred spaces, the country of the Anbiya. Many of our prophets, they lived in this country where you are. Palestine is a country of the Anbiya and the Awliya, of the prophets and the righteous, friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's beautiful to see the sacred land, and Inshallah, it will be free for our Palestinian brothers and sisters so that they can go and visit, because we're so sad to see that even people in their own country cannot visit the sacred places, unfortunate right now, due to occupation. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring ease to all of our beloved brothers and sisters in Palestine. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Samah. And before you give, I have a gift for you, but this will be given in the future. This is bukhur. This is bukhur, inshallah, and this is some oud. This bukhur is from Morocco, inshallah. It's a mix of bukhur with oud and with some rose water. And alhamdulillah, rose water is something that we see is very beneficial. And actually, when I sometimes meet my clients, I tend to put some bukhur before we start the sessions, just to bring the holistic aspect of feeling health from all points of view. So inshallah, we will have the opportunity to give this to you. On the behalf of ISIP, my colleagues, I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank Dr. Zainab for also joining us today. I want to really send our salams to you and say that we really appreciate you, and we're at your service as your colleagues, as your brothers and sisters. Really appreciate all of your work. I want to thank my colleagues, Sister Fatima, Sister Ruqayya, for helping out today. I want to thank the whole ISIP movement, all of our colleagues, for the amazing work you're doing to normalize mental health from Islamic point of view, and also working with decolonial psychology, because as Dr. Samah said, we need to work anti-colonial psychiatry and mental health. And there we have a lot of brothers and sisters from other faith traditions and other traditions as well that are with us as our comrades and companions. And I want to thank all of you brothers and sisters who joined us today, inshallah. All of your questions and reflections in the Zoom has been remarkable. All the things you're doing in your advocacy, brothers and sisters from all over the world, is so important. Thank you so much. Before we end, Dr. Samah, would you like to summarize anything, any last remarks? The floor is yours.
I just want to thank all of you for showing your interest, and I see that the majority of the people stayed all through this discussion. And I want to thank you, Brother Said, for organizing this. It's been a pleasure to talk to discuss this. I think many people, it's not only Palestinians, many among you are affected by what's taking place in Palestine, and to talk about it and to connect about what's happening in this difficult time. This is the thing that maintains our solidarity and connects us in common humanity. So thank you for creating this opportunity.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. We have a heart-to-heart connection with all of you. They say in our sacred tradition, they call it murabata, the heart-to-heart connection, and center of health is in the heart, as we say. So alhamdulillah, shukrullah, Dr. Samah. Thank you for leading us, and thank you for being our teacher and our mentor. We learn from you, inshallah. We consider you to be our leader and teacher as well. You're the psychologist, not only for the Palestinians, but for whole humanity and for all Muslims and non-Muslims all over the world. Once more, brothers and sisters in the chat, I'm sorry, we can't address all of your questions. I know a lot of you want to ask questions, so bear with us. What we will do, Sister Fatima, with your permission, we will collect all of your questions, and then we will communicate with Dr. Samah and see if we can get answered whenever she has time, inshallah. We will collect all of the resources that Dr. Samah has shared with her organization, her own social media handles, articles, everything, and also the resources from ISIP so you can benefit. Please join ISIP's crisis support group so we can mobilize for the works of Dr. Samah and all of our other colleagues. Dr. Samah, 2 weeks ago, we met Dr. Yasser from the Gaza Mental Health Network. I know that you know him, so we're trying to be of service to them as well. And Dr. Denise and Dr. Iman and the rest of the excellent team. And so join the crisis support group, brothers and sisters, join the ISIP Islamic psychology groups. We will mobilize, we will do research. Brother Ahmed has shared our research centers network so that you join and we can do research with our Palestinian colleagues and disseminate their scholarship to the world. So we will be at your service. We will do action items. We will be in touch. And yes, I want to thank you all, brothers and sisters. Thank you for your reflections, questions, for your solidarity and participation. Please forgive me as your facilitator for any shortcomings from my side. If I said anything wrong, did anything wrong, rest assured that I'm a person with a lot of errors in my character. Allah knows that, and all the good comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the mistakes are solid in mine. Thank you, my beloved brothers and sisters and colleagues. You're all doing an amazing job. Dr. Samah, would you like to lead us with a closing dua? It will be great if you'd like to do.
Yeah, please.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Please, Dr. Samah, give us the blessing of you leading us.
Please.
No, I will be following your prayer. Please do it.
Okay, I will ask Sister Fatima is great in leading prayers. Then, Sister Fatima, would you like to lead us in the prayer? And then if you want.
Dr. Samah, we
really want you.
Our honor if we could at least ask you to lead us, please.
Please.
Even a Fatiha.
Yeah, even a Fatiha.
well, what I would like to say now is دعاء القنوت.
Ameen.
Yes. Ameen.
So just give me a minute. اللهم إني أشكو إليك ضعف قوتي وقلة حيلتي وهواني على الناس. اللهم أنت العفو فاعف عني. آمين.
آمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم لك الحمد، لا إله إلا أنت، اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم، وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، والسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. We ask for, inshallah, for relief, for protection for our dear Dr. Samah and all of our Palestinian brothers and sisters and all those facing oppression all over the world. May Allah utilize us to help end this brutal occupation and the oppression, and help us always be on the side of truth and of lifting up the oppressed and of ending the oppression. Ya Rabbal Alameen, forgive us for our shortcomings and help guide us and grant us tawakkul and trust in that you are the one who knows and sees and is intimately aware of everything that is going on in everyone's hearts, and the people who are crying who we cannot hear. Oh Allah, you know that you hear them and you will answer their call, Ya Rabbal Alameen. We ask, inshallah, that we are united, inshallah, in our hearts, and there's nothing difficult for you to change of this situation. Allah grant us tawfiq in granting your submission and granting us submission and submitting to you wholeheartedly,
Amen.
knowing that you are the one who will grant victory.
Amen.
Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Fatima, for the beautiful dua. May Allah accept it from all of us. Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Samah, for your dua and also for joining us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free Palestine and free all people all around the world that are facing occupation, colonization, dehumanization, genocides. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to meet, inshallah, in Jerusalem and also all over the world, inshallah, whether it's in Sudan or in Myanmar or in Morocco, and may Allah make it easy for all of our brothers and sisters who are suffering in Palestine, also now with the earthquakes in Morocco, with the floodings in Libya, with the situation in Sudan, but also the earthquakes in Afghanistan and the floodings in Pakistan, and also all of our Uyghur brothers and sisters who are suffering because of dehumanization, all of our brothers and sisters in Myanmar who are suffering from dehumanization, all of our Muslim brothers and sisters, and all of our brothers and sisters beyond all religions, all faith, all people that are suffering, no matter which religious or culture or ethnical background you have. May Allah make it easy for all of us, and may Allah make it easy for all of us, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Samah. We'll allow you to, we appreciate your time. Jazakallah.